What is a power addiction, and does it help explain the bizarre behavior that's terrorizing our country? Dr. Anna Lembke helped open my eyes to the spectrum of addiction. She talks a lot about it in her book, Dopamine Nation, released in 2021. She explains to us that we can't limit our thinking about addiction to things like booze or other drugs or porn or gambling. We have to understand that anything from which we get a dopamine hit can become an addiction. Dr. Gabor Mate, another addiction expert, I like his definition of addiction best. He says, anytime we're getting that short-term pleasure, that dopamine, but there are long-term negative consequences and we keep doing the behavior anyway, we have trouble getting that behavior out of our life, that's addiction. Gabor Mate was also the first to diagnose Donald Trump with an addiction to power. In my case, I was an alcoholic. I overdrank and I would get the dopamine hit from the alcohol, but then on occasion I terrorized my family. My behavior was unacceptable, big time negative long-term consequence, but I kept trying to keep alcohol in my life. I kept trying to figure out a way. That's addiction. Nationally, globally, let's look at tariff policy. Every time a new tariff is instituted, that's exertion of power. There's dopamine coming from that. Now, the tariffs are taxes on consumers, they keep inflation high, and they make enemies globally. The negative consequences cannot be overstated, but the behavior continues because of the dopamine hit every time it happens. What about all these trophies that are either re-gifted or made up? Listen, every time he receives a trophy, there's a dopamine hit. So despite being ridiculed nationally and globally, and despite the rest of the people being able to see through the thin veil that this is all fake, that's a big time negative consequence to reputation and to standing. The behavior continues anyway. Now let's look at the power that's being exerted over political enemies. Look, the majority of Americans want the borders secured, but what we're seeing with the ICE activity in blue states, this is draconian. This is over the top. There is a huge dopamine hit that comes from punishing political enemies. The negative consequences, really barely need to mention those. Innocent people are dying. There's terror in the streets. It's just as bad as it can get, but there's a pathological ignoring of the evidence. Listen, that's gaslighting. That's what addiction is. Anyone who's experienced an addictive relationship knows that when somebody is telling you what you're seeing with your own eyes, that's not really true. That's gaslighting. That's addiction. If you'd like to hear more of our opinionated ramblings, we hope you'll check out the Untoxicated podcast. You've got this, and we've got you.